Hey everybody, I want to talk about a product and platform that I absolutely love and our latest sponsor, Interseller, the prospecting and outreach platform of choice for recruiters and sellers. Whether you're doubling down on business development or recruiting talent, Interseller does all the heavy lifting of finding contact data, automating the email and follow-up process, and syncs all that rich data into 20 plus CRM and ATS platforms. Reach out now and get going on a 2-week free trial and let them know you heard about it from Adam on the podcast today. Check out the link on the website. Appreciate it.
Welcome to the podcast, where we introduce you to incredible humans who share their journeys with the mission to inspire you to harness your own inner tenacity to drive your life and career forward. And now, your host, Adam Posner.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast, where I bring in the best and the brightest in the world of business, marketing, and personal growth to help you harness your own inner tenacity to drive your career forward. My guest today on the podcast is Illana Raia. Illana is the founder and CEO of Être, a mentorship platform for girls. Illana's a firm believer that mentors matter as early as middle school and works to bring girls directly into companies they choose to meet female leaders face to face. Prior to Être, Illana worked as a corporate attorney at Skadden Arps and a guest lecturer at Columbia University. Just an awesome side note, Illana actually followed in her grandmother's footsteps, who graduated in law school back in 1936 as one of the only two women in that graduating class. We'll get to that in a little bit. And I'm pumped to hear more about her journey and her story and how she's leading mentorship. So let's get into it. Illana, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. And we just had a really fun chat beforehand. And I should record some of these because like people don't get a taste of we don't just jump into podcasts. Like you have to you gotta wine and dine a little bit before you get the show rolling here. So let's get into it. You studied government in undergrad, which makes sense since you went into law right afterwards. But I'd love to hear what was it? Did you when you were a little girl, did you always want to be a lawyer, or is that one of those things that you kind of evolved into?
No, I knew I wanted to be a lawyer from a really embarrassingly early age, I will say. Most of my family's in medicine, and my dad, all of my uncles and my brother, and my grandmother, as you said, was a lawyer. And she was a lawyer when women really were not lawyers. In 1936, Brooklyn Law, she graduates. And I was very close to her, and I used to just follow her. I remember seeing her in court. I watched her speak at large public gatherings. And I just knew instantly that was what I wanted to do. So I think early on, I went to Smith. As you said, I studied government. I went to DC in my junior year, worked with Senate Judiciary. I couldn't get enough of it.
Was your grandma your first mentor?
Yes. And I actually love that you just pinpointed that. She was, before I even knew the concept of a mentor. I just knew that this was someone who I didn't just want to be like. It wasn't just aspirational. She was invested in me. She wanted to guide what I was doing. She wanted to throw other examples at me. Yeah, definitely my first mentor.
It's interesting too, because you meant that, because mentorship isn't always as overt as it needs to be, or doesn't need to be as formal as I am your mentor, you are my mentee. It's people that you look up to. I mean, I look back when I was probably about 14, 15. I had a next door neighbor, Rich, who was a business guy and an entrepreneur. And I just saw him. He was working from home. He was traveling to China, selling textiles and carpets and fabrics and everything. And I was like, wow. I was like, this is inspiring. And I didn't know it then, but I know it now looking back on it, that he was a mentor to me, even at that age. And I feel that there's a lot of young folks who, just by nature of where they are in life, they don't know they need that yet. They don't know that they want that. So let's walk through the process a little bit. So when did you decide to leave law? I mean, you spent a good amount of time.
I was there a long time. I was there in the early 90s and met my first sort of work mentor there, Nancy Lieberman, who changed the way I wanted to practice law. And she was just a fantastic and impactful mentor. Then I left for 6 years when my kids were small and I was home. And when my youngest went back to school, went to kindergarten, I went back to the same firm for another 10 years. So I was there twice for long periods of time and, sat at the cuff of amazing mentors and learned from legends. And in 2014, my kids were going off to college. I just somehow felt like it wasn't the last job I was going to have, but I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do next. But while I had been working and my daughter had been in middle school, so maybe close to the age your daughter is now, I realized that she didn't know what I did every day. for a living. She just didn't know. And it's not like mergers and acquisitions is an easy thing to explain to a kid in middle school. But the more I pushed and talked to my other friends who had much cooler jobs than I did, I realized that none of our girls really knew what we did every day. So even when I was working, they knew that I was out, somewhere. They couldn't put their finger on what I was doing. And I wasn't taking the initiative to break it down for her and say, this is what I do. When you're in math class, here's what I'm doing. So I started taking her to see my friends in action with their careers at work. Forget law for a second. Let's go see what it's like to run a fashion house, to be an orthopedic surgeon, to work on Wall Street.
So it's just organic. You just started taking, it was like take your daughter to work day all the time.
Every day, all the time. Yeah.
And it just happened organically. And we'll get to it in a little bit, but I want to hit the rewind button for a moment there. Early on in your career, and my wife's an attorney, we mentioned that before we talked about it, like there's some organizations who don't have a formal mentorship program. Young folks in their careers don't know what to look for. They don't know how to find a mentor. They don't know that they need one. Did someone reach out their hand to you, or did you have to raise your hand early on?
I love that expression. And I got lucky, I think is what happened. I was at the University of Chicago. In fact, I just this past weekend was at my 30th reunion. So I was on campus. And this woman, Nancy, who I mentioned, had gone to Chicago, graduated in 79, interviewed me. And we had a great interview. And I understand how rare this is, but she actually gave me my offer in the interview and said, there are a lot of great firms out there. We're going to sit right here. You need to come to this firm.
They wanted you.
So, and then I worked for her exclusively for the first 2 years. So I got lucky. Skadden does now have a fantastic mentorship program, and 71% of Fortune 500 companies today have formal mentorship programs. So if you're lucky, you get matched well. But for me, it was entirely the stars aligned, and I wound up in the right place at the right time.
You're definitely lucky on that. So what advice would you give young, and let's just pause for a second here. Is there a specific reason why we're focusing on females only, or do you open this up to males as well?
Être girls is entirely for girls. Être, the French word for the verb to be, because I like asking girls who they want to be. I get asked all the time, where's Être guys? When are you doing it? And I don't hate the idea at all. For me, it comes down to the data. We did a survey last year, came out in October of 22, right on Day of the Girl. And we were trying to measure girls' confidence, because a lot of what I had seen when I take girls into boardrooms, or even the reason I started going from taking my daughter places to taking other people's daughters places, is because you hear about this confidence gap that can happen right around age 8, right around age 9. And, or even older, 10, 11, you see this confidence gap. And I wanted to measure it. We found last year that between the ages of 13 and 18, the percentage of girls who say they feel confident drops by 35%. And the percentage of girls who say they feel smart, that drops by 34% between those ages. So when people ask me, why is this for girls? I'm falling on the data right now. We don't see that kind of confidence fall for boys. And
that's encouraging, inspiring, and I think that makes a lot of sense here too. And I know personally, like my wife and I, my daughter knows what I do. She knows from a professional standpoint that I'm a recruiter. I help people find jobs. I help companies find people who need jobs and to fill open roles. She understands that concept. What I do is not hard to explain. She comes and she's been on my podcast a few times. She loves it. That builds her confidence. I'm lucky. But she doesn't really know what mom does. Mom's a lawyer. Okay, what does she do? She does something with buildings and real estate. Okay, she's almost 11 years old. She understands that. So there is a value to really understanding what strong, powerful, and I use the word powerful carefully there, but confident women do, and how they got to their point in their careers, and why it's such a impressionable age. There's plenty of organizations that focus on college and early career, so it's important. So how did you get this thing off the ground? Let's talk about the early days of Être.
So the early days, I stopped working in 14. I basically took 2015 to really think about what I wanted to do. And this mentorship thing was in the back of my mind. And I knew how much fun I had taking my daughter and how much my friends had loved having her in their office. So my original idea was I was just going to build a website and take quotes from those amazing women about their jobs, post them all up as sort of an inspirational thing, and then put free resources up. If you're interested in fashion, if you're interested in science, chess, whatever it is, here are free resources and women who are willing to reach out and help or talk to you. And So I launched that in 2016. It was very interesting, and I'm so happy to be on your podcast for this, is that we actually turned 7 today.
Congratulations and happy birthday.
Thank you so much. So I launched the website, and I decided I was really new to the space. I was going to send one cold email out every single day to a woman I didn't know, saying, hey, this is what I'm doing. I'd love your feedback, good or bad. I'm very new in this. I would just love to know what you think. And if there's anyone you think I should speak with, would love her name too. And 6 weeks into that, Ariana Huffington wrote back and said, I love what you're doing. I want you to write for Huffington Post. I want a video of you with your girls. She was doing this Talk to Me series on video. So all of a sudden, she asked for our logo to put it up on the site. We didn't have a logo. I took a screenshot of the top corner of our website at the time, which was self-built and grainy and terrible and not the pretty website you see today. But for the first probably 4 years, that was our logo, because that's what was sent to Huffington Post. And
life
that
is an iteration. It's an iteration.
That was it.
Right? It's a work in progress.
Having that column once a month to be able to break down big topics for girls. Let's talk about equal pay and break it down like it's a middle school math problem. Let's talk about what diversity in a boardroom looks like and feels like, and why that's, adjacent to your classroom and decision making. Having that opportunity made it grow so much faster than it otherwise would have.
I love that story. So was there that pivotal moment when you said, you know what, we're onto something here, we're seeing the value of it, or is it more of over a course of time? Was it like that one aha story, or is it?
It's a little aha. It was the first visit to Spotify, the very first company. The girls immediately were not satisfied with just role model quotes.
And how'd you get into Spotify? Did you had a
I reached out to someone I knew there, and I said, look, I'm doing this website and the girls want more. Immediately, the girls who were finding us said, the quotes are great, we love them, but we want to go there.
Of course.
And that had been, of course, right. That had been the origin when I took my daughter. So I reached out to someone at Spotify and I said, don't laugh. Can I take 10 girls in? We won't overstay. We'll see only what we're allowed to see. You want their phones in their pockets? We'll do it.
Whatever
it's fine. And can we meet 1 or 2 women? It doesn't have to be super senior, but to talk about what it's like to work at Spotify. And and Spotify did an unbelievable job. We were everywhere. We toured everything. They let them take pictures. They were on the stage. I mean, it was phenomenal.
Of course.
But then we get into the boardroom. And so here are 10 girls. They're spinning around in their boardroom chairs. And the women, it was phenomenal. And the women got to the panel and they said, it's your meeting. It's your meeting. What do you want to know? And that minute when I saw 10 hands fly up and the girls were asking smart, authentic, really unvarnished questions. They were too young to say, hey, where's my internship?
Nope.
They wanted to know, what's your favorite part of your day? How did you know you'd be good at your job? What do you do? Walk us through it. I knew right then, you talk about the aha moment. It was like the light bulb went on at Spotify. And I thought, this is entirely what we're supposed to be doing.
That's incredible. So going back to the data, over the last few years since the program has been up and running, what have you seen? What's been the feedback? What's been the growth? What's been the some of the non-quantifiable results when you look at a girl who's turned into a young lady and is in college and moving on to their career, because you're starting to have those folks graduate through at this point. Where are they, and how big of a difference has it made?
That is one of the most exciting things about what's happening, because again, I built it for middle school, but now we're seeing that first class. They're in college and they'll email me and say, remember that woman we met at Morgan Stanley? I'm actually an econ major now. Do you think she'd look at my LinkedIn? And they're circling back and closing that mentorship loop. And every single woman is saying, yes, of course, send her to me. So that's really great. Girls are looking for internships at places where they feel they have a brand affinity. So maybe they went to, TikTok or YouTube or Google or the floor of the stock exchange, anywhere we've been. And now they're saying, I loved what I saw there. I loved that woman had this amazing team. I want to go try to work there. And so there's that immediate connection already. The other thing that we saw since the pandemic was that we've gone a little bit global now. During the pandemic, we couldn't go
talk to anyone
live
anywhere.
Into companies. Right. So we started doing it on Zoom.
People
we
have more
can't go
time.
to Disney. Right. We can't go to Disney. Let's do it on Zoom. We can't go to Billboard, NASA, but let's talk to astronauts by Zoom. And I noticed that girls in India and South Korea and Turkey were joining these Zooms. So now we've got after school clubs, not just in the US, but we've got clubs in Canada and, all those countries I just mentioned. And the girls have exactly the same questions.
Of course.
It doesn't matter whether she's in New Jersey or Jerusalem.
It transcends
she
borders.
Wants to know.
Of course, it's borders. That's
100%.
amazing. And how is the program monetized?
It is not right now. That is something I'm working on. It is entirely self-funded right now. I wanted in the beginning to keep it a pure play. I didn't want any company, any logo you see on our website is there because they've either opened their boardroom door or shared their resources
So it's
with
not
us.
a paid sponsorship.
No, there's zero pay
and
to
it's
play
not a
right
recruiting
now.
platform. You're not grooming folks or girls early on.
No, and it's not a nonprofit even. It's a B Corp. So it's a benefit corp because I can see monetization down the road. What I actually really would love and what I think is possible given what we've
What's the
done
dream?
so far. Well, one dream anyway, is that girls can sort of have products that are inspired by their work. How cool would it be to reach out to a company and say, our girls have an idea for a limited run product sponsored by this or these role models, 1,000 ideas about that where the girls are really heard. They're not just part of the purchasing block. They're part of the focus group. They're part of the inspiration. I would love that kind of thing, but it needs to come from the girls. So I can see that down the road, which is part of why I didn't make it a nonprofit in the first place.
Hey there, fellow podcast listeners. I'm Kevin Logan Jr., host of the Immutable Mindset podcast. If you're fascinated by Web3, blockchain, and disruptive technology, then you won't want to miss a show. Join me and co-host Adam Posner as we introduce you to an incredible lineup of successful entrepreneurs, builders, and industry veterans who share their insider knowledge, unique perspectives, and personal stories that will leave you inspired and craving more. Like Mike Isogawa, the CEO of Webacy, who shares her journey from being a Cirque du Soleil performer to a cybersecurity pioneer. Or Dave Schwed, COO of Halborn, who discusses the future of digital asset security and how the future of assets will be tokenized. We also break down complex topics into digestible bits, perfect for both experts and newcomers to the world of Web3. So if you're ready to stay ahead of the curve, subscribe to the Immutable Mindset podcast now, wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.
So let's talk about mentors because there's and how to let's talk about how to be a good mentor, because I think that for some folks it's natural, and some folks they think that just by telling you my story and how I did it, I'm showing you the way. But there's lots of different ways. What are some of those frameworks that you teach the mentors to really be a good mentor to the mentees?
It's an interesting question. Most of the women who have had sort of a mentor impact on the girls are coming hardwired to do it. They remember exactly what it's like to stand there in those high tops and ask these questions. So that relationship's already there. I think what they do incredibly well is that they don't underestimate the girls. They take the girls, no matter how young they are. You could have a 9, a 10, an 11-year-old in front of you.
Is that the right age? Like 8, 9? Is that like the impressionable age?
You know, to me, I think starting early is good. I'm not saying high school or college is too late. I think starting early is good. I think if you take that girl who's scared to raise her hand in math and you put her in front of a woman who says, yep, I was scared to raise my hand in 6th grade. I felt exactly like you do. But then I got over it by 7th grade, and now I'm an engineer at Google, and you should come meet my whole team. That's the kind of thing that changes. That girl's going to raise her hand the next day. So I don't know that there's an age that's too early. I think it depends on the girl. The girls that seem to be drawn to us are curious, and they don't have to know what they want to do. You know, when we named it Être, it's not what do you want to be? It's who do you want to be?
It's who do you want to be?
The jobs they're going to have probably haven't even been invented yet.
Let's talk about the Epic Mentor Guide, which is sitting behind you. For anybody watching this on video when we put it out there, tell us what it's all about. What's the purpose and who's the audience? So
this was the second book. I did a book in 2019 that was aimed at sort of the middle school set. This is aimed at the high school, college, and graduate set. And it came about because during COVID, we couldn't go into companies.
No.
So I just started having girls send me questions. We can't go ask them live, but send them to me. I'll try to get them answered. So girls were sending in questions. How do I get my art scene at Pixar? And I said, well, let's ask a woman at Pixar. How do you get an internship at SpaceX? Let's ask a woman at SpaceX. And when we crossed 100 women who were participating, it became a book. So it has 180 women answering direct questions from girls across the globe, really specific. Girls who are eyeing and entering the workforce. Questions like, you know, being prepared for internships. What can I ask in an interview? Do I really need a cover letter? And different companies have different answers. But the women who participated, it blew my mind. It was like Christmas every single day, opening my email to see who said yes.
I love the positive side of it, but I want to dip a little into the dark side a little bit. Are girls putting out questions these days around discrimination, gender, sexual equity? What are you seeing and feeling? Like these young girls, I mean, they're exposed to it. They know so many things. Like it blows my mind what my 11-year-old knows. I'm like, I didn't know anything about that till I was at least 14 or 15.
I totally agree.
Right. They're exposed to things that we never were at a young age. And instead of resisting it, we lean into it. We have these conversations. But what are some of these are tough conversations. What are some of the tough conversations you're having, if you wouldn't mind sharing?
No, inclusivity was a huge focus of a lot of questions. They were asking it in the context of the workplace. So how do I know when a firm says they value diversity, equity, inclusion? How do I know? What should I be asking?
Are they just saying it? Is it just lip service, or is it real? Is it just a phrase that they need to put on their website because they have to? Like, how is it real?
And so women were answering. They were saying, these are the 3 questions I would ask in an interview. And then I would be proactive. It's not just what are you doing so far, but if I come to your firm, how can I help you further these goals? Which I thought was a really great answer. Not just asking about the framework or the scaffolding that exists, but how can I contribute to it and build it higher? There were questions about, racial bias. There were questions about age discrimination, gender discrimination. And most of the women in the book were the first for something. The first Black female hockey player with the NHL, the first woman, the mom in space. They were the first. And so they could really just reflect honestly and say, this is what it felt like.
And the pioneers.
They were the pioneers. They're talking to the next generation of pioneers, which was fulfilling for both sides.
Let's dig into confidence a little bit. Confidence is something. It's a hot topic for me and my daughter, and we're lucky that my daughter has an insane level of confidence. But sometimes I look at some of her friends and other girls her age, and it's tough. Some girls have it built in naturally. So we get into the nature versus nurture conversation. I personally think that my daughter, if I look at the DNA, my wife and I, we're both very confident and secure for the most part. We also give her the tools to be confident. We encourage her. How do you build confidence with the kids? And then what are you doing with the parents? Let's talk about parent mentorship as well too on that side, because that's an extremely, if not more important, critical component.
It is. They're both great points. In the survey I was talking about before, 86% of the girls surveyed said they'd be more confident with a mentor. And in areas like finance, that number went up to 93%, saying if they knew they had a mentor at their back, they would be more confident. They would try for scarier goals. Maybe they would enter that science fair. They would try out for that varsity team. So some of it, I think, is having someone in your corner, and that can be anyone. As grownups, we think about mentors like it's only in a professional context.
Life mentors.
But a coach can be a mentor. A parent can be a mentor. A peer, an older sister. Mentors can come from anywhere, and it doesn't necessarily have to be this lifelong or career-long mentorship. You can have mentor moments.
It can be transactional moments. I like that. I like mentor moments. And mentors. One thing I always say, I have mentors that are really close to me that I engage with, almost daily, weekly, and then I have mentors from afar, folks that I look up to and see how they're doing and how they're living their life.
And those moments are, they can last a long time.
Mentorship
right
moments.
Before COVID hit, we did an event in LA with Tyra Banks. She was 9 West's spokeswoman of the year. 9 West reached out and said she wants to have a meeting with 10 of your girls. We did it in LA. It was 1 hour. And she spoke to them about what it was like to be a model at the time when she was a model, what she's doing now with entrepreneurship, how she felt different, and how casting agents dealt with her. It was 1 hour. Those girls are still talking about it.
I can only
It was
imagine.
a mentor moment. Yeah. So I think, and when you talk about parents, you have obviously a lifetime of mentor moments with your kids, but they are watching and they're absorbing how you deal with people you're mentoring or people who are your mentors. They're watching. I think during the pandemic, and certainly I saw this with girls and their moms, maybe they knew what their moms did, but they saw it up close and personal because mom was working in the kitchen. They heard her on conference calls. They saw her dealing with her peers and her colleagues and her clients. And, moms were meeting the moment, working from home, just like everyone was.
It was firsthand.
And the girls were watching. And those were mentor moments that were brand new.
I didn't even think about that. Our kids, and listen, our kids got to see us working.
Yeah.
They got to see what we do. They got to be around us. They got to hear phone calls. And we also had to be a little bit mindful of what we were saying and how we were acting.
Yes.
Like shit, like my kid could hear me downstairs, they hear when I'm upset. They hear when I'm excited.
It was the good, bad, and the ugly. Yeah.
There was a good, bad, and the ugly. So let's shift gears for a little bit. I want to talk about how smart companies are saving boardroom seats for girls and women. What does this mean and how's it being put into practice?
We haven't had a single company say no. When I reach out and I say, and again, the girls pick.
Well, what are you asking?
I'm asking for us to be able to come in. Normally our live visits are in the New York area. That's where I am. So let's say I'm going to take girls from the tri-state area, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut. all 5 boroughs of New York. I mix it up. So we bring in a diverse group because diversity in the boardroom really means that. So let's have girls not all from one school or one zip code. And I'll reach out to a company and say, I asked my girls, and 75% of the girls this month voted to come see your company. We need to come during a work day. We'll be in and out inside of 2 hours because the girls are leaving school and coming back. We want to see anything that you can show us. We'll meet anyone you can give us. We're not asking for anyone in particular. The days are fluid, whoever's free, but we meet women. And our girls want to ask about your company and what it's like to work there. And we have had companies do everything from put the company name up in lights in their lobby. We rang the bell at NASDAQ in January. I mean, the things that they're doing, it's unbelievable.
And how are young girls finding you? What does that process look like?
That's a lot of social media. In the very beginning, it was word of mouth. But, the minute a girl puts something, or someone just saying, oh, I have a girl who would love this. Or do you ever go into, museums? Do you ever go into hospitals? Like very specific questions for careers. I think the girls are finding us mainly because when they see someone who's been somewhere cool, they want to do it too. Or someone's been in a book. Her question was in a book, or she did a TED Ed talk with us because we're a licensed TED Club. That's what they see and they reach out, and I want to make it what the girls want. I take my direction from them. I don't take them anywhere they don't want to go. And the companies, I think, smart companies know that they need more women in the boardroom. And so they see this as a pipeline.
Illana, you're obviously a accomplished professional. You've had a extensive career with successes. But what has been the hardest part, the biggest challenge for you right now with growing Être?
That's a good question.
And running it too.
The monetizing that platform has to change. I always laugh that I was an M&A attorney who went into this project with no business plan whatsoever. It was a passion
That's how
project.
life works, right? Like you have to get all this experience and I don't know what I'm doing here. I'll figure it out.
So all of a sudden, in fact, the board so far has been all middle and high school age girls. And I love the fact that my advisory board is big and it's all girls.
That's pretty cool.
This year, turning 7, we're actually forming a board of women from the companies we've visited. And it's going to be, the companies are unbelievable. We'll be announcing it this week and next week. Because I need grown-up advice, I need to be talking to people who are my age or older. And the time for us to really scale through schools, we've established there's something sticky here. We've done our research. It's time to actually put some money towards it. And whether that turns out to be investors or company sponsorships or whatever form that looks like, that's been a challenge to me because I wanted the pure play to last forever. And we're just bigger than I ever thought we'd be. So we need to grow.
That's amazing. So there's one thing I had to ask about. You're the chair-elect on the International Space Station U.S. National Labs Education Subcommittee. And I had to look down my paper to read that one so I didn't mess it up. How does a former lawyer, mentor, and leader get into space? I love space. If I could turn my camera around, you can see my adult Legos here. They're all the space station, the spaceship, the Hubble space. It's all over there.
Yeah, it is an unlikely pairing. You're not wrong. Our girls have a heavy STEM and space interest. And I was constantly talking to different astronauts, reaching out to women who work at the ISS National Lab, women who work at SpaceX and Redwire Space and all of these places to answer questions. And I kept pushing the resources into schools. And the ISS National Lab actually has unbelievable free resources for schools that a lot of schools just don't know about. And NASA, all of them have these access to role models, experiments that can be done here on Earth and then in microgravity at the space station. And a spot opened up on this committee, and it is educational outreach. It's making sure that the right resources get into the hands of schools, particularly in underserved areas. And I got offered the spot and I jumped at it, and I'm chair-elect now. And what's fantastic about it is I may not have the STEM background, but I will fearlessly ask the question that I get from a girl. So if I get a question from a girl in Texas who wants to know something about life on the space station or what kind of medical research is being done, all I need to do is know who to ask and to pair them together and then leverage those resources and bring it to her school all day long. Yeah.
And I also think there's a tremendous value of being a mentorship conduit too. I do it all the time too. When I see someone needs something from an advice perspective, and I'm not just talking about generic advice, but career advice, and I'm not that person or I don't have the time or the resource, it's being able to connect them with that. So we're getting close to the end here, and I want to end with something pretty important to me. These letters over my head here, the name of my company, these are my daughter's initials, Nina Harrison Posner. I named
I love that.
my company after her. And I've been heavily involved in my journey into the next phase of technology with Web3 with her by my side, and we're learning together. And we'll talk offline about that in a moment here. She does my TikTok videos. She's doing NFTs with me and everything. So it would mean a lot to me if you could leave her a piece of advice to just how she could always remember to be the best version of herself.
First of all, I love the logo. I love what she's doing. And yes, I have people that she should meet for sure. I would say to her that she should always remember to raise her hand instead of lowering her standards. And when I say raise your hand, I really mean that in all contexts. Raise your hand to ask every question you have. Don't wait for someone else to ask your question. Raise it, voice it. You might be the only one with that question, or everyone might have that question. Raise your hand to volunteer for stuff that moves you. Raise your hand to protest that which you disavow and you want to speak up. Raise your hand to be seen, to be heard, and keep those standards really high. There are no dreams that are too big. There is no aspiration that is unreachable. It won't always happen, but you might get close or pivot into a direction you never thought was possible. So I honestly would say, and I say it to girls all the time, but I mean it specifically for her because she has parents invested in her future, willing to put her name on the logo and ask her advice and do projects with her. Ask every question and just keep those standards remarkably high, because if the bar is high, you'll clear it.
I love it. And that's tremendous. And thank you. And similar, and I end with these two questions. What's the greatest piece of advice that you have ever received personally that you take action on every day of your life? Something you wake up, a mantra, something you really believe in, something you say every day to get the day going.
Those two are different things. I will say one of the best pieces of advice I ever received was when I was working from a mentor who said, raise the problems early. No problem gets better if you leave it alone, if you hope it'll go away, whether it's a scheduling problem, a staffing problem, a structural big picture problem, raise it early. Nothing good happens if you wait. And I actually think that's true across the board. In terms of a mantra, I want to democratize access to mentors. I want every girl, no matter where she is, no matter whether she's holding down 3 jobs or caring for her younger siblings because her mom's an essential worker, wherever she is, I want her to have exactly the same access to mentors that a girl who lives next door to that company or it's in her backyard has. So I think that's my mantra. Stuff. I just want that door wide open.
That's the good stuff. And last but not least, Illana, you look back on your career journey and those times where you had to dig down deep and you faced, different issues and you needed to pull yourself up and harness your own inner tenacity to drive you forward. And now you look with gratitude and appreciation for this incredible career, this family, this life that you've built, paying it forward with Être and this incredible organization that's really making a difference. What keeps you focused? What is your guiding light? Illana, Raia, what is your North Star in life?
Connection. I think it's connection. I think it's connection that starts with my family. None of this would happen but for the family that I'm in and the inspiration from my kids. And then connection just growing out in circles. Connection to that first network that said, you're not wrong. This could be something. Let me introduce you to 3 women who might help. Connection from that first thing with Arianna Huffington. Connection that you make from one company. And then she says, you know where you should visit? This company. And connection to these girls in these clubs in other countries. Connection.
I love it. Connection is what it's all about. Illana, I want to thank you so much for joining me and my audience today. This has been an incredible conversation. Hang with me for one moment here as we sign off. Everyone, this has been a great show. If you want to find out more, you could go to illanaraia.com. We're going to link it up in the comments in the show notes. You can also sign up for her LinkedIn newsletter. And you can check out the Être website at www.etregirls.com. That's Être Girls, Être with an E, not A, etregirls.com. Illana, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. I had a blast.
Awesome. Good stuff. And everyone out there, remember, sharing means caring. If you enjoyed this episode, leave a review, rating. It goes a long way. Remember to take care of each other. Look out for one another. Follow us on our social media channels, thepodcast.com. And have a great day. We appreciate you.
Wisdom is forever, but for us, it's time to go. Thank you for joining us. Luckily, we'll be back with our next episode soon, jam-packed with more incredible humans. Thank you for listening, subscribing, and sharing. To join the conversation, search The Podcast on LinkedIn. And to catch up on past episodes and more info, please visit www.thepodcast.com.